Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good evening, everyone. It is Friday, August the 13th, 2021. It is currently 4:44 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. Did I say good evening? If I said good evening, I apologize. Good afternoon. It's not quite evening yet. So good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, August the 13th, 2021. It is now 4:45 p.m. Central Time. And yes, I'm still sitting here in the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are listening live on this Friday afternoon, welcome to Friday. Welcome to the end of our week of studying Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 to 22. If you're not listening to me live, whenever you hear this, welcome to the end of this week of study in Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 to 22. I'm laughing because we've been working on Revelation chapter 3. See, we've been in Revelation chapter 3. We spent all of last week and all of this week, and I'm still getting emails from people who are like, they're listening to some Bible study exercise that I did like 6 months ago. And I'm like, and they're like, hey, I'm still trying to catch up. And I'm like, thank you. Some people are still in Psalm 37. Some, I don't even remember. I got multiple emails today from people who are doing Bible study exercises that are, months old, maybe even some that are almost a year old. So whenever you may hear this, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. You may want to catch up with all of the ones that we're currently doing so that you'll be caught up. But or just, you listen however you want. Who am I to tell you when to listen? You listen. That's so very 2021, right? No one watches TV when the networks want you to watch it. You watch it when you want to watch it. You don't watch a movie when the studios want you to watch it. You watch it when you want to watch it. And when it comes to podcast, you don't listen when the podcaster may want you to listen. You listen when you want to listen. You listen to music when you want to listen to it. Everything is so catered to our wants, to our schedule, that it's kind of interesting that we live in a culture where so much is done the way you want. In other words, you're in charge. You can watch what you watch. You can watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it, how you want to watch it. And I think some of that creeps over. I wonder how much that impacts our approach to church. Well, why should I go to church and listen to a sermon at 11 a.m., I'll listen to a sermon when I want to listen to it. I'll go to church when I want to go to church. I think I wonder how much that has negatively impacted us spiritually. That could be an interesting podcast. So whenever you hear this, because I do realize this when I get emails, sometimes I'll get an email and someone will have say something about my podcast, and I'll say, I just listened to your podcast, and they'll say something, and I'll have to sit there and look at the email for like 30 minutes going, what are they talking about? When did I talk about that? And I'll have to think. I'm like, whoa, that's from like 2 years ago. Okay. So when they say, I just listened to your podcast, it may not be anything that I have done recently. So whenever you do correspond with me, if you'll let me know like which podcast you're referring to, that really does help. Or if you have a question, sometimes that really helps gives me some idea. But we are trying this, and I really want to get this across. We are trying to build a group of people who are studying with us, in real time, like this week's study, they're doing this week's study. Now, I know that's not always going to be the case. Many people will be behind. So if you're behind, that's okay. That's okay. You just move on at your own pace. But if you are participating with us in the current week's study, definitely let us know that as well. It's going to be interesting to try to figure out how, where the audience falls. How much of the audience is basically like, okay, when you start the study, I'm with you. I may be a day or two behind, but I'm pretty much with you. And the ones who are like, I'm 6 months behind. It'll be interesting to see that kind of how that breaks down. And it's really it's kind of given me some insight that I wasn't quite prepared for, because a lot of times when you're doing a podcast, sometimes you don't think about, okay, so when will the audience hear this? How are they going to engage this content? So whenever you hear this, I hope that the study is being beneficial. I hope the study has been beneficial. And for those who've been with us all of this week, basically live or pretty much caught up, well, thank you so much for tuning in and so much for participating. And hopefully it's been a very interesting study. All I can say, it's been an interesting study for me. I've been sitting here in the empty sanctuary for about almost an hour now. And I wish you could see a photograph of this table. There are books everywhere, stacks upon stacks of books. And I have been trying to figure this out. And I think what we're going to do, this podcast episode, it's going to have the potential to be really, 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 really bad. And I know that's not the way you tease it out. I'm supposed to tease you with, this is going to be really good. So stay tuned and keep listening. So I'm kind of telling you, don't get your hopes up. Don't get your expectations up. And here's the reason why. This is a Bible study exercise. I have to stress that because so many people don't get it. The goal here is not to me to turn on the microphone and just teach you. In fact, this entire podcast series, the Bible study exercise series, is designed to do absolutely the opposite. It's to try to get you to be an active participant in the study. I try to take you through the process. I try to do some teaching, and then I do a lot where I'm just like, well, what about this? And what about that? And I throw out ideas, and maybe I even act like I don't know the answer because I'm trying to get you involved. So this one is going to be taking you through the entire process, trying to figure out how do we interpret a verse that I will argue is very difficult. And hopefully I can demonstrate to you, there is very little agreement on it. And if there's so much disagreement about the verse, that's a pretty good indicator that we've got to be very careful about being dogmatic. But I'm going to just take you through source after source after source. We're going to ask questions. We're going to look at things. And hopefully when this is all said and done, hopefully you do grow in your understanding of the verse. But I stressed this in yesterday's study. Let me stress this again. One of the reasons we're doing it this way is not only because it's a Bible study exercise, because there is a practical lesson for you to learn. So many times when you listen to a sermon, so many times when you're sitting in the pew at church and you're seeing the person standing behind the pulpit, time and time again, when they preach a passage, they may say something like, well, some people think this is complicated, but it's really not that complicated. It's actually very easy. And whenever our pastor says that, at least for me, I get extremely frustrated because, one, they're either trying to make it sound like they've got all the answers and all of those other people who can't figure it out are just not as smart as them, or two, they're really downplaying the complexity and the difficulty of the passage that they are preaching on, and which to me doesn't help the people in the pew. Remember, the purpose of the church is to equip saints so that they're no longer children tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. You can pretend that it's not difficult, and you can pretend that it's not an issue. But if the people in your church are actually Bible students, at some point they're going to come across the reality that, wait a minute, there's like 20 different interpretations here. It's not that simple. And then you didn't prepare them. You didn't equip them, and next thing you know, they're being tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. It's our job from the pulpit to let the people know this is difficult, this is complex, this is going to take us a lot of time to figure out. At times it may appear to be very tedious and very difficult, but that is for your benefit. And then after you're done going through whatever that text is, your people won't be tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine, because whenever they hear any teaching on it, they've already heard you explain that teaching and explain the difficulty. So that's why we're going to work through this in a very it's going to be a very painful way. At times it may appear to be very tedious, but I hope this is very beneficial. All right. So Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. It's what we've been studying all week. And hopefully you've been participating. And if you're new, welcome. Please go to theologycentral.net, go to the blog section. There's an article there about a daily discipleship guide. Follow the link. You can register for all of the curriculum. It's absolutely free to you. Please register, and you can access all of the curriculum. And some of this I'll be making references to that curriculum, and that's one of the resources that you have available to you. And again, it's free of charge, no obligation. But please sign up. We still have seats available, and we want to use up. We have to pay a subscription fee for the curriculum. And we want to make sure it's being used by as many people as possible. All right, so do that. Are you ready? Now, yesterday we determined that I'm not going to refer to you as class. I'm going to refer to you as my fellow classmates. So welcome, classmates, to this late Friday afternoon, early Friday evening Bible study exercise. I'm going to stress the exercise on Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. But if you've been with us all week, you know which verse we're stuck on, and you know which verse we're going to try to start working on this late afternoon, early evening, okay? Now, I really hoped that my email inbox was going to be full today. I really hoped it was going to be full of email after email about, okay, here's what I think. I figured this out. What about this? But sadly, all of my emails today, none of them had anything to say about Revelation 3, 14 to 22. So I was grateful for all the emails I did receive, but I was really hoping that I could come here going, okay, so-and-so said this, or if I didn't give the name, one person said this, another person said this. I really wanted to add that to the conversation, but I'm hoping that even though I didn't get the emails, people are out there working on this. So are you ready, okay? Oh, we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do. I know that was 12 minutes of introduction, but that's okay. Are you ready? All right, Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. Hopefully you've read it so many times this week. Hopefully you've literally read it so many times that I hope you've read it so many times this week that there is no question. You know everything about it. You know everything in it. And I apologize. I'm looking around for something to mark a page. All right. We need to mark that passage in the scriptures. So there's a couple of scriptures we're going to be looking at that I think are going to be very critical here. But Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. Here we go. Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. Let's read it one more time. And unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans, write, these things saith the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods. Turn the page. And have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Zealous therefore and repent. Be zealous therefore and repent, if I can read correctly. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him and he with me. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Now, I've been reading this over and over and over and over and over all week. And once I read it there, this time, once again, something new just jumped out. But I can't go to this new thing because, well, we've got one very big thing in front of us. All right? So let's remind ourselves. As Jesus is giving this message to John, for John to write to the angel of the church, pastor or elder, for this to be delivered to the church of Laodicea, as Christ is giving this, he points out that a number of issues with the church. Let's say that. And I am still going with the interpretation. The main issue with this church is the fact that they are lukewarm. Again, read about it in verse 15. Jesus is telling the church, I know your works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou were cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Now remember, this whole illustration here has everything to do with the city of Laodicea. They did not have hot springs. They did not have cold springs. Water had to be brought in from an aqueduct system from a city that I think was about 6 miles away. The water had all kinds of minerals. The water at times tasted horrible. There was all kinds of issues with their water, and they were lukewarm. And many times trying to drink the water, you would want to literally spew it out of your mouth. All right. But they are spiritually lukewarm. And I believe because they are spiritually lukewarm, the lukewarmness creates the following problems. It makes them unaware of their actual spiritual condition. You see, if you're cold, you know your spiritual condition. You know you're cold and antagonistic and dead to the things of God. You know that. There's no hiding it. There's no, in fact, you're very open about it because you're so cold. If you're hot and passionate and zealous for the things of God, you know it. But that lukewarm spiritual condition, you become almost a comfortably numb. You become unaware. So the lukewarmness creates a situation where you're unaware. You are self-deceived. You don't even truly see your spiritual condition because you are comfortably numb. You're so lukewarm. You don't even see your true spiritual condition. So you're unaware. Listen, you are self-deceived. You cannot see it, and you become self-sufficient. There's almost a smugness that just comes upon you, and you're like, I'm good, I'm okay, I don't need anything. I don't need to do that, I don't need to do that. I'm perfectly okay with where I am. And I believe lukewarmness creates all of these issues. All right, it creates all of these issues. And again, their issues are, now I want you to see, because they are self-sufficient, because they're unaware, because they are self-deceived, they cannot see the reality. And here's the reality of their condition. They say that they're rich, increased with goods, and have need of nothing. And they know that, and here's their real spiritual condition. They are wretched, miserable, and poor, and blind, and naked. That's their true spiritual condition. Their true spiritual condition is they're wretched, they're miserable, they're poor, they're blind, and they're naked. That is their true spiritual condition. Now, physically, they may be materially wealthy. They may have the right clothing. They may be able to see. Physically, there is one reality. There is another reality spiritually. And Jesus comes along and says, okay, here is how messed up you are. Again, I believe the lukewarmness creates the unawareness and the self-deception and the self-sufficiency. I really do believe that it's the spiritual reality of lukewarmness that creates these other issues. So Jesus comes along and counsels them. I counsel thee to buy of me gold, tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. So he counsels them to do a couple of things. To buy, I want to put that as a separate one. To buy. And they are to buy gold, white raiment, and eye salve, or medicine for their eyes. That is what they are to do. And we have to figure out exactly what this means in verse 18, because immediately we're hit with a couple of things. All right? Let's just think about this. Clearly, they already perceive themselves as rich. And if you know anything about Laodicea, if you've studied the city this week like you were supposed to, this is a center of a banking area. They had money. They had gold. So it wouldn't make any sense for Jesus to say, hey, guys, here's what I want you to do. Because you are, spiritually speaking, you are wretched, miserable, poor, and blind. I want you to go buy some actual physical gold from me. So immediately we know that there's something, this is symbolic, illustrative. It's trying to demonstrate something. Jesus is trying to give them a spiritual solution, but he's using language that they would understand. They know about gold. They know about clothing, and they know about eye medicine. And here's, I think it's very interesting kind of play on words that are going on here that I think is interesting, all right? In this passage, Christ is referring to or alluding to basically the city, Laodicea, of the city's three main sources of income: banking, the production of wool cloth, and as far as we can tell, most sources say it was a black wool cloth, and medicine. Remember, they had like a school there of medicine for the eyes. So he refers to the things that they need are the very thing, that what they need spiritually, he relates them to the very thing the city of Laodicea is known for in the physical realm. In the physical realm, the city is known for gold and money because they have banking. In the physical realm, the city knows about wool cloth, this black wool cloth that they would make, because they were famous for it. The city knows about eyesight because they had an entire place known for treating different problems and diseases to the eye. So they knew about all of them. So in a sense, Jesus is drawing a contrast here. The Laodiceans' gold, now I want you to think about this. I think it's their lukewarmness. It may be their lukewarmness, but because the lukewarmness creates the spiritual condition where this occurs. But because they're spiritually lukewarm, their physical gold, their physical material wealth blinded them to their spiritual poverty. Because of their lukewarmness, they were in such a condition that their expensive garments hid their spiritual nakedness. All right? Because they live in a city that produced eye salve, a city that produced eye medicine, they were unaware of their spiritual blindness. So they were so lukewarm that the very things in the city, their lukewarmness created the situation. I'm going to stick by that. I think if we miss that, then the lukewarmness just becomes one of many problems. I think the lukewarmness creates the entire idea, because again, if you're lukewarm, you don't realize it. It's just this comfortable feeling that, well, I'm not off there. I'm not cold. I'm not dead to the things of God. I don't hate the things of God. And well, I may not be as excited as that person, but you know what? I'm steady. I'm consistent. It just creates a smugness about you that you can't see it. And once that happens, so now you're spiritually lukewarm, and then you live in a city where, hey, there's all this material wealth. Now, that material wealth becomes you see the material wealth, but you cannot see your spiritual poverty. Look, you see the clothing being produced in Laodicea, this black wool cloth, and you're like, this is awesome, but you cannot see your spiritual nakedness. You see that you live in a city that produces eye medicine, and you know all about it, but you cannot see your spiritual blindness. So literally, Jesus is making the things he's telling them to do is directly referenced to what was going on in the city and their three main sources of income. So that is fascinating to me, and it's critical in understanding this text. It's critical in understanding this text. But we're still left with, what in the world are they supposed to do? All right? So think about it this way. They are to turn to something other. This is what they have to realize. They have to come to an understanding that they need something other than what the city of Laodicea and the culture can produce. They need something other than what they already have. Now, they have to be brought back to an awareness of this, because their lukewarmness has created this situation where they can't see it. They can't understand it. They don't realize it. That is the worst place to be spiritually, is when you're so bad off spiritually, right? You're completely poor, you're completely blind, you're completely naked spiritually, but your spiritual condition is one where you can't even realize it and see it, and you think that you've got everything you need. That is a horrible place to be, and it's one that we have to constantly, pray that we don't ever end up there, because when we end up there, we're going to be the last person to know that we ended up there. When your church ends up there, it's going to be the last church in the city to know that it's there. Right? So how do we understand this? What do we do with this? Well, we got to start with the obvious. Revelation chapter 3, verse 18. We got to start with, I counsel thee to buy. We got to start with the buy. I counsel thee, or I advise thee to buy. They've got to buy. How do we understand this? Now, I think it's obvious that he's not telling them to go buy more gold. I think it's obvious he's not telling them to just buy a different kind of cloth. And I think it's obvious he's not telling them just to go get some eye medicine. They already have gold. They already have raiment. They already have clothing, and they already have the eye medicine. Clearly, they need something spiritual, right? They're spiritually bankrupt. They're spiritually naked. They spiritually cannot see. They need spiritual solution. There's no other way. Nothing else makes any sense here. I think we can all understand that. So if clearly what they need is something spiritually, how do you get what you need spiritually? By buying it. And they're supposed to get it from Christ. So does Christ open up a store? So clearly there's something spiritual going on here. How can we understand this? Well, first thing we can do, let's just make sure the word buy makes sense here, right? Let's just make sure the word buy makes sense. And the reason I say that is sometimes, not always, but sometimes what can happen is that there's a textual issue. In other words, one translation will say buy, but maybe another translation will not. Let's just make sure. So we're going to check all the English translations. And the best way to do this, if you go to Google, just go to google.com, go to the search bar, type in Revelation chapter 3, verse 18, and look for the entry for BibleHub.com. Once you go to BibleHub.com, guess what? You got every English translation. Let's see if any English translations remove the word buy or change it. Let's see what they do. New International. I counsel you to buy from me. New Living Translation. So I advise you to buy gold from me. The ESV. I counsel you to buy from me gold. The Berean Study Bible. I counsel you to buy. Berean Literal Bible. I counsel you to buy. King James. I counsel thee to buy. New King James. I counsel you to buy. A New American Standard. I advise you to buy. New American Standard 1995. I advise you to buy. New American Standard. I advise from 1977. I advise you to buy. The Amplified Bible. I counsel you to buy. Christian Standard Bible. I advise you to buy. Holman Christian Standard Bible. I advise you to buy. I think every English translation on earth, I haven't gone through all of them, but that's a lot, all say buy. So there's no major textual issue here. There's no textual variant. There's not like, okay, wait, why 10 translations say it this way, and then we have to, 10 say it this way. No, all of them say buy. All right, so is it possible that the word buy here doesn't mean buy? Well, let's do this. Let's go to the Blue Letter Bible app really quick. All right, let's go to the Blue Letter Bible app. Here we go, Blue Letter Bible app. I'm going to go to the book of Revelation. I need to go to the New Testament, Revelation chapter 3. Look down to verse 18. The Blue Letter Bible app, it's another, for those who are new, it's a source that I use this all the time because I like taking you through the process. All right, Revelation chapter 3, verse 18. I counsel thee to buy. And buy here is this Greek word. Here we go. It is this Greek word. Maybe, if I can get to play.
Strong's G59, agaradzo. Agaradzo.
right? Agarazzo, and it is used 31 times, and it means to buy. It's 28 times to buy, 3 times redeem. Strong's definition, agarazzo, is to go to market, to purchase, specially to redeem, buy, redeem. Again, it's used 31 times. You can look at all the places where it is used. The outline of usage is pretty simple: to buy in the marketplace, to attend it, to do business there, buy or sell of idle people, to haunt the marketplace, to lounge there. All right, that's not very helpful. So basically, to market or to do business. So it's the idea of actually purchasing, obtaining, getting. Well, how are we to obtain and get this? Now, most commentaries completely ignore the buying aspect. They go right to, so what is the gold? What is the white raiment? What is the eisoph? They skip the buying. All right? Or they'll just throw one cross-reference out, but they don't really do much with it. So let's go to one cross-reference that I think has to be considered. And that's the book of Isaiah chapter 55, which some of you, I would assume you knew that that's where we're going. Isaiah chapter 55, because you've done your work this week. Isaiah chapter 55, verse 1. Listen to it carefully. Everyone that thirsteth, Isaiah 55, verse 1, everyone that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that hath no money, and he that hath no money, come ye, buy and eat, yea, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Wherefore do you spend money for that which is not bread, and you labor for that which satisfieth not? Hearken, children, unto me, eat ye that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness. So he's saying, everyone that's thirsteth, everyone that's thirsty, come and those who, so everyone is thirsty and you don't have any money, come and buy wine and milk without money and without price. Hey, if you're thirsty, you come to me and buy wine and milk with no money. All right, so clearly this is another example of this idea of buying, but here at least it tries to explain that they're to buy it without money. What could this possibly be referring to? Well, now, most of the translations don't do anything with the, no, I want to say most translations. Most commentaries in many cases appear to ignore the buying in Revelation 3:18, but at least some of the commentaries aren't so quick to skip it in Isaiah 55 verse 1. Let me give you an example. I'll give you a couple here, all right? So this is from Ellicott's commentary for English readers. Just give you an example. Everyone that thirsteth. The whole context shows that the water, the wine, the milk are all symbols of spiritual blessings, distinctly as they are. And then it gives John 4:10, Matthew 26:29, and 1 Peter 2:2, giving you the different ways that what water, milk, and wine could all represent. Okay, that's interesting if we were taking that apart. Now, the word buy here is elsewhere confined to the purchase of corn and would not rightly have been used of wine and milk. All right, maybe, possibly. The invitation is addressed as an tone of pity to the bereaved and afflicted one of Isaiah 54, 6 through 7. So it's almost like, hey, it's almost like a sign of pity. Look, guys, if you don't have any of these things and you're thirsty, come and buy, but without money. So it's almost like showing pity. All right, now, without money and without price. Literally, for not money and not price. The prophet has used the word buy, but he feels that the word may be misinterpreted. No silver or gold can buy the blessing which he offers. Something indeed is required, and therefore the word buy is still the right word, but the price, listen carefully, is simply the self-surrender that accepts the blessing. So according to this commentary and Isaiah 55, when it says come and buy without money, that clearly the buying is the correct word because something is required. Something has to happen for you to get this. Something has to occur. Well, then that would make sense that in Revelation 3:18, Jesus telling them to buy, that it's still the right word because something is required. And clearly, it cannot be physical gold. That would make no sense because how do you give Jesus, a bunch of physical gold to get it? That doesn't make any sense because they don't need physical gold. They already have it. They need something spiritual. So what can they do? Now, I think it's interesting. I think there's another play on words going on here in Revelation chapter 3. See if you can get this. All right. Revelation chapter 3, verse 18. Now, again, I think it's interesting that he's literally referring to the very things the city makes its money from, right? The gold, the clothing, and the eye salve or the eye medicine. But I think it's interesting. If you go back to 17, he describes them as being poor. Hey, you're poor. So clearly he's not saying that he wants them to buy something, but the idea that how am I to buy it? Now they've gotten the material wealth, but the material wealth is not going to purchase their spiritual solution. But they're so spiritually poor. What do they have to offer spiritually that will allow them to buy it? So how can they buy it? Clearly they don't have. What do they have to offer? Well, according to this, that in Isaiah, the buying here simply means self-surrender. That accepts the blessing. Now, they give some scriptures here. They have Proverbs 3:14 through 15. Now, we're going to run this down, see if we can at least come to an understanding of the buying here. All right, maybe that's as far as we're going to get today. It's supposed to be the end of the study for this week, but we'll see. Proverbs chapter 3, let's go to verse 14. Proverbs 3, verse 14. For the merchandise, we need some context here. All right, let's go back to verse 11. Proverbs 3:11. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, and even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. Now this, give us a little context. Wisdom and understanding. For the merchandise of it, wisdom and understanding, is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things that thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. All right. So here, what's better than gold and silver would be wisdom and understanding. So is it possible that the way you buy it is through, well, see, then you'd have to get the wisdom and understanding. I don't know if that really helps their case here. They're saying it's self-surrender. There has to be, think of it this way. There has to be a level of self-surrender in order to obtain God's wisdom. Because you have to first surrender that you don't know everything. You have to surrender your understanding. You have to surrender your wisdom to accept his wisdom. So maybe that's the idea. Hey, you've got gold and silver, but wisdom and understanding is far better than that. So surrender yourself to God's wisdom and understanding. Okay, maybe. They have another cross-reference here. Matthew 13, 45 through 46. All right, that's interesting. They go to Matthew 13. I think the answer is in Matthew 16, but we'll see. Matthew 13, 45 through 46. I'm interested to see what reference they have here. Matthew 13, verse 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Now, clearly you can't buy the kingdom of God, but it's the idea that once you find the truth of God, you give up everything. You surrender everything in order to obtain it. So let's take this back to Revelation. Hey, church at Laodicea. Hey, you may have all the material wealth in the world. You may have the right clothes. You may have the right eye medicine. You may have everything because your city is wealthy, but you don't realize something, guys. You're spiritually, you are a mess. You are poor. You're blind. you're naked, you are in serious trouble spiritually. So you need to buy something. And what are you going to do? You've got to surrender, and you've got to lay down your self-deceit. You got to lay down your self-sufficiency. You've got to lay down your comfortable lukewarmness. You got to surrender all of that so that you can obtain the spiritual blessings that come from Christ. Think of it this way, right? Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16. Now, if you know the context here, Jesus has told Peter, starting in verse 20, he tells all of the disciples, Matthew 16:21, from this time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how that he must go into Jerusalem, suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, Be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. So he hears what Christ tells him, and he says, Nope, not going to do that. It's not going to happen. Never going to happen. And Jesus is like, whoa. That's pretty, he doesn't say these words, but it comes across like it's pretty arrogant of you to think you know best. Because Peter here is demonstrating at least an attitude like he's got it all figured out. He knows what's best. He knows the situation. He knows what should happen. And what should happen, according to Peter, is Jesus should not go to Jerusalem and suffer many things and be killed and raised the third day. He's like, no, that's not the plan. Because it's almost like Peter's like, I know the plan. I'm aware of the real plan. He's so self-deceived that he thinks he's got it figured out. He's so self-sufficient that he's like, I don't need your words. I know what to do. In fact, he could have even been thinking, if you go back just a little further, when Jesus says, who do people say that I am? It's Peter who says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And you're like, look how good. Look, I got the right answer. Remember that answer I gave you that was so awesome? So I know what, now he forgets the fact that the only reason he knows that answer is because it was revealed to him by the Father. I guess he probably didn't hear that, but he's like, I knew the answer. So I know the answer here. Jesus, I know you're saying this is what has to happen, but I know the answer. He's unaware of his own spiritual condition. And we know this because when he even is warned that he's going to deny him, Peter's like, no, not me. Because he's unaware. He's self-deceived. He's self-sufficient. So what is Jesus? So Jesus takes him aside and rebukes him, right? Well, Peter takes Christ aside and rebukes Christ, which is just absolutely crazy. There's Peter rebuking the eternal Son of God. But then Jesus turns to him and says, Get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense unto me, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but thou that be of men. Peter is coming to him from his perspective, his own unaware, self-deceived, self-sufficient arrogance. That's what Peter is approaching this. And then we'll look what he says. Jesus said unto his disciples, okay, hey, Peter just served as a good example of this. So let me tell all of you, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. Hey, church at Laodicea, you know what you need to do? You need to buy. And buying means you have to surrender yourself. What you need is you need to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Deny yourself. You've got to come to the realization of your spiritual bankruptcy and realize that you have nothing to offer. You're poor. Now, maybe physically you think you've got the world to offer, but reality, you're poor, you're blind, and you're naked, and you need him. You've got to come to the end of yourself and surrender to him. Now, this is true, and I want you to see this. This is a church at Laodicea. Even as Christians, we have to every day struggle to deny ourselves, take up a cross, die to self, and not follow self, but follow him. It is the same thing we all struggle with every single day. But when you are lukewarm, you'll think that you already are good to go. You'll think, I don't need to deny myself. Look at how much I deny myself compared to them. You're going to get this smug, self-sufficient thing that you think you're okay. And that's the problem. I think the buying here has to be some kind of surrendering of self, hey, Christ, I'm coming to you. I don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything. I'm poor. Christ, I don't have any clothing. I need clothing because I'm naked. Christ, help me see because I can't see. It's a self-surrender due to an awareness of your spiritual condition. And he just pointed out their spiritual condition. So now, once they see the condition, they need to go to Christ for the solution. I think the buying, that's the only thing that makes any sense to me. Nothing else makes any sense. All right? Now, I'm going to read from one other commentary that mentions this, and just to see if we can have this. All right? It says here, without money and without price, God's spiritual gifts are freely given to men. They cannot be purchased, being in their own nature more precious than rubies. Their value transcends human means of payment. They cannot even be earned by men's best works, for men's best works are comprised in his duty to God, and have therefore no purchasing power. God may choose to reward them, but if he does so, it's a free grace. So they don't really offer exactly how to buy there as well. The buying there in Isaiah 55. The other commentary did. So even in many of the commentaries, when you get to Isaiah 55, many of them doesn't offer a lot of solutions. I think the only thing that makes sense is the Matthew 16. Now, I think the concept is being drawn from Isaiah 55, but I think the only way to understand Isaiah 55 is from Matthew. I think that's the buying. It's a surrender. When I buy something, I surrender something, right? I don't have my wallet with me. It's somewhere here in the church. But when I leave here, I will have to stop and get myself something to eat for this evening. Now, when I go through the drive-thru, I am going to surrender money in order to obtain that. Here, he's like, you're going to surrender yourself in order to obtain what you truly need. What will fix your spiritual condition. I think that's the only explanation for the buying. All right, now, go back to Revelation. Go back to Revelation, chapter 3. Now, we have something to figure out. What is the first thing they are to buy? The first thing they are to buy here is gold, tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich. What is this gold? Now remember, they have physical gold, but they are spiritually poor. So they don't need to go get more physical gold. That doesn't fix anything. They're already in Laodicea, banking center of the region. They don't need that. So they need some kind of spiritual gold that they're going to obtain from Christ. What could this gold be? What could it represent? Well, let's see if we can come up with any answers here. Now, I think the buy, I think I'm on solid ground with the buy. The gold, I don't know if we have any good answers here. But we're going to do our best to try to figure this out, okay? Let's go with, hang on, I've got to log in here because it logged me out. We're going to go with the curriculum. Now, I'm going to go to the leader's guide here. Now, some of you, I think all of you have access to it if you look around. If you do, feel free to look there as well. Hang on. Trying to talk and log in at the same time can be challenging for some, but I am a broadcast, yeah. Yeah. I was just getting ready to say I'm a broadcast specialist and then realized, no, I'm doing it wrong. So here we go. Hang on. There we go. Now, type in the password and we are in. Okay. Now, here's the leader's guide. I'm going to let you know what they have to say in regards to the gold. They don't even try to explain the buying, which to me is so problematic. But again, remember, this curriculum is there to supplement what we're doing. It's not to be the whole study. All right. Okay, here we go. It took forever. All right. Verse 18. All right, here we go. 17. All right, here we go. This is what it says. Verse 18. Believers should rely on Christ. When they fail, they should accept God's loving discipline and repent. The Lord, the Amen, told the Laodiceans how to find the authentic things they need for their salvation. Notice that each of the principles he delineated corresponds to the failings he mentioned in the previous verse. These are the only solutions and cures for the Laodiceans' spiritual shortcomings. The Lord advised the church in Laodicea, buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich. While the Laodiceans may have been materially wealthy, they were spiritually poor. The refining process removes any impurities from the gold. In his first letter, the Apostle Peter wrote concerning spiritual gold in relation to the sufferings his audience was enduring. He noted, wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise, honor, and glory at the appearing of Jesus. That's 1 Peter 1, verses 6 through 7. That's all they have to say. That doesn't explain to me what the gold is. Other than, so is gold trials? So I need a purchase from Christ's trials. Hey, Christ, I need some trial. I need to surrender so I can have some trials. I'm having a hard time trying to see how that actually works. Christ, I'm going to surrender. I guess you could say this. Christ, I will surrender to trials so that it will purify me. Now, he says that the leader's guide here, there's one thing there that bothers me a little bit. It says this, these are the things he told the Laodiceans how to find authentic things they needed for their salvation. Now, that one's a little concerning. Hey, here's what you need to be saved. Are you saying that no one in the church of Laodicea was saved and that these are the things one has to do to get saved? Hey, to get saved, you have to surrender to trials. That seems to start making it a works-based salvation. So that's a little concerning there. But they try to make they don't even really come out and say what the gold is there. They just try to liken it unto trials because, well, they've got the passage in 1 Peter. I don't know. I'm having. Okay, are we still live on the air? Okay, I think we had a temporary problem. Let me look here really quick. I just noticed that everything was reconnecting. I think we lost internet. We didn't lose power. We see it still says we're live on the air. Give me a second here. Okay, I think we had a temporary problem. Let me look here. Okay, I think we're still good. I think we're still good. I think we lost internet for a second, but I think we're still live on the air. So I hope we're still live on the air. I apologize for this. That's what happens when you're doing a live broadcast. But we're going to press on. Okay? Because everything tells me we're still live on the air. So, okay. If you're listening to me live, you can let me know that we're still live on the air. Okay. It sounds like we are. All right. So we got to figure out what this gold is. We got to figure. I already pushed the mic aside, and you probably heard me go. All right, I was getting ready to start going, no! All right. So, okay, good. I'm still good. All right. So we got to figure out the gold. So a couple of things. I'm very concerned that the leader's guide in the curriculum, again, you can get access to it, seems to try to apply that these are the things people have to do to get salvation. That's a little concerning because that turns salvation into, well, not only believe in Christ, surrender, deal with trial. Like you got to go through. I don't know here. That's a little concerning. So could gold simply be trials or persecution? I don't know. Let's look at some other commentaries here and see what they have to say. All right. Let's look at some other ones. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go into my Olive Tree Bible app. here I have a commentary from Warren W. Worsby. Let's just look at his, all right? This is what they say. The Laodiceans were blind. They could not see reality. They were living in a fool's paradise, proud of a church that was about to be rejected. The Apostle Peter teaches that when a believer is not growing in the Lord, his spiritual vision is affected. It says, diet has bearing on the condition of one's eyes. Okay, that's not helping us. Let's go here. Okay, here we go. The solution, pay the price to get true gold, tried in the fire. This suggests that the church needed some persecution. They were too comfortable. Nothing makes God's people examine their priorities faster than suffering. All right, so this seems to imply that the gold was or that the thing that they're to get is they're to buy persecution. How do you buy persecution? I guess, hey, church, what you need to all do right now to fix your spiritual condition is we need you to beg God for persecution. Like, so God won't give you persecution unless you ask for it? Like, I'm having a hard time with that one as well. All right, so persecution, trials. So we got basically two ideas. Trials, which could be persecution or just everyday difficulties, and persecution. And that they are to buy this from Christ. What? That one I'm having. Let's see what else we can come up with here. All right. Okay, that one's not, I don't think that one's going to be helpful. All right, let's go with some other. I'm just going through commentary after commentary here to see what we can find. All right, gold. Here's what this one says. A golden coin tried or fired out of fire, right? So they're saying this gold is a golden coin that's tried or fired out of fire, and so free from alloy or dross. Some suggest that gold here stands for faith. Does not, however, the self-deceiving state of the church rather point to love as the missing grace. The Laodiceans were as those who had many graces and appearance. They were not unlike one who had gifts, tongues, and understanding, liberality, but lacked the fervent love with which all was as nothing. So they're saying that the gold here is love. Love is the only coin which passes there. But the possession of this love would bring the zeal out of the tepid into the fervent state. Such love and pure and fervent could only spring from God, who would shed abroad his love in their hearts. So we've got love, trials, persecution. None of that seems very beneficial here, all right? Gold refined by the fire, and this is what it says here. Gold superior to that on the possession of which they so prided themselves, that they may indeed be rich. To buy this gold by giving something of equal value in exchange, they were truly unable. Yet it was to be bought and would entail the sacrifice of something which they perhaps was dear to them, would be nothing in comparison with in return they would obtain. Doesn't even bother to tell us what it is. All right, so that's not helpful. What in the world is the gold? What could it be that they needed? Does it have to literally represent something specific? What could it be? Let's just look at one more commentary. We're already at an hour. Wow. Man, I don't want to go more than an hour. We're going to have to stop. Let's see here. Look at a couple of others. This is, doesn't help us at all. Most of these commentaries are useless. Why? Which is so frustrating when you spend money. Yeah, that one doesn't, I literally doesn't offer anything about the gold. Others saying that you need it. Let me see here. Yeah, I guess two commentaries go with the idea of gold. They don't really give us an idea. So here's the thing. And the best they can come up with is just because the trying of your faith is like gold. So that's why people connect it there. They connect it there. Is there anything else like unto gold? Oh, now we're at 1 hour. I'm going to have to stop. So we didn't get very far. We figured out the buying. I think the buying makes sense, that it's a self-surrender. It's the Matthew 16 concept. Hey, church, you're spiritually lukewarm. All right. You're so lukewarm that you're unaware of your spiritual condition. You're self-deceived and you're self-sufficient. So you think that you're rich. You don't think you need anything. You think you've got the right clothing. You think you can see. But here's the spiritual condition you're in. You are absolutely poor. You're bankrupt. You're in poverty. You don't even realize it. You're completely naked. And guess what? You can't see. That's how bad your situation is. So you need to buy something for me, and that means there's going to have to be a surrender. And I think that the only thing that makes sense to me is, church, you need to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. That's what they need. The church needed to move away from this spiritual lukewarmness. Now, some would argue that they need salvation, but how can you be spiritually lukewarm and be lost? That just doesn't make any sense. This is a church that's spiritually apathetic and lukewarm, and it creates these situations. So they need self-surrender. And by surrendering themselves to them, they need to get gold. And I'm going to throw out a theory. Now, I could be, I don't know if I should do this. I'm going to throw out a theory. I wanted someone to find this, but I haven't received an email. I'm going to throw out an idea. Is it possible? Is it possible that what we should not do is try to say gold represents this, the raiment represents this, and the eye salve represents this? I wonder if that's a problem. I wonder if that's a mistake. The three things that they are to get from Christ are three things that directly relates to the major source of income from the city. So is it what he is saying is these things from the city that you're holding on to that for some reason has blinded you to your spiritual poverty, your spiritual nakedness, and your spiritual blindness? Is it possible that Christ is simply using an illustrative way of saying what you need to do is turn to me? I'm the one that can give you spiritual riches. I'm the one who can give you spiritual clothing. I'm the one who can give you spiritual sight. The culture can't do it. The world can't do it. And you can't do it for yourself. I wonder is it just a general way of saying you don't look to all of these other things. Surrender yourself to me and turn from all of these other things. Is it a mistake to try to say gold represents this, clothing represents this? And because here's the thing, the gold one, no one I don't think has a good answer. The white raiment, people are going to be like, that's imputed righteousness. But wouldn't the church already have the imputed righteousness? I think that maybe there's the mistake. We always want those three things to represent something. Does it simply represent You're so blind and you think these things are the things that make you rich, clothe you and give you sight. But the reality is you've got to stop turning from all of these things that basically bring about your self-sufficiency, your spiritual apathy, your spiritual complacency. You've got to surrender all of that and turn to me and find everything in me. I've got to be the one that has the preeminence. I've got to be the one that you find the source for everything you need spiritually. Now, I'm not saying that there's not problems with my suggestion here, but it's got to be, are we not getting on very shaky ground saying gold represents this, the clothing represents this, and the eye salve represents it? Are we not getting on very shaky ground? Because we have to just go find other random verses and import them here. Put it this way. Everyone for gold goes to, is it 1 Peter? I believe it's 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 7. So here's your homework today. What argument would you have? Well, first of all, just look up the dates. Look up the dating for the writing of the book of Revelation and look up the dating for the epistle of 1 Peter. All right? And just see, would the believers at Laodicea even had access? Would they even have had access to 1 Peter? Would they even have had access to it? Was it even written at that time? Or was it so close together that there's a high probability that the church of Laodicea would not even have even heard of 1 Peter? If they didn't have it, then they wouldn't have 1 Peter as the code going, oh, there's the gold. I would think it would have to be something in the Old Testament. So figure out, when is the date of 1 Peter in connection with the dating of the writing of the book of Revelation, right? And then justify, if you're going to use 1 Peter and say that it's trials or persecution, and what would be your justification for importing the use of the symbols of gold being purified, that the trying of your faith is like the purifying of gold? What would be your justification for taking that and saying that that's the key to interpreting the letter written to the church at Laodicea? It's got to mean something to them. We always forget about the original recipients. We act like that the letter came to us and we're like, well, hey guys, it's right there in 1 Peter. Don't you? That's how pastors do it. The answer is in 1 Peter. But the original recipients would have been like, does anybody know how we get this gold? Does anybody know? I think it's obvious that he's using gold, clothing, and eye salve because those are the three main sources of income for the city of Laodicea. So they're like, okay, he wants us to turn away from all of these things and turn to him. Christ is the solution to their spiritual condition. Christ is always the solution to our spiritual condition. I think that that's the answer. I think. All right. I'm going to stop there. Thank you, Will, for letting me know that everything was still good. I was literally about to fall on the floor because we were 46 minutes in and I looked over and on the screen, there's like a red button that I pressed to stop it. And the red button was gone. And it was just the little, like thinking icon you get when a web page is loading, and where it said live, it said reconnecting. And I was like, oh, no. The only good thing is Spreaker, it has a delay. It's about a minute delay, maybe a 2-minute delay. And as a result, sometimes if it temporarily goes off the air, that delay, it will catch back up if it goes off. And I guess our internet, we didn't have a power issue. And thanks, Will. I've got the box right here of the thing you sent. One of the men of the church were supposed to get together and hook everything up back here in the sound booth. So we do have a backup power supply now to keep us from whenever power goes out. But that would have been an internet connection, so there's nothing we could have done there. But again, even the fact that we have internet out here in the middle of nowhere is pretty amazing. So there we go. All right, I hope that was beneficial. I hope that was beneficial. It's such an important passage of Scripture. But you keep doing your work. If you come up with a solution for the gold, the white raiment, and the eye salve, I know you're going to disagree with my theory. I know everyone's going to disagree with my theory. Everyone always disagrees with my theories. But I'm just sitting here going, how far do we go with this? Just one example. I have here the World's Bible Handbook, and they have a dictionary of biblical symbolism. And do they have gold listed here? Yeah, here we go. Gold. Gold illustrates the following: saints after affliction, tried faith, and then this is crazy, doctrines of grace, Revelation 3:18. So according to the dictionary on biblical symbolism, what the church at Laodicea needed was they needed to surrender themselves to the doctrines of grace. That's what they need to surrender themselves to, because gold represents the doctrines of grace. And the verse that supports it is supposedly Revelation 3:18. When I went back to the church library and I saw that, I literally had to sit down because I was laughing so hard. I'm like, what? So Revelation 3:18, that doesn't define gold, supposedly, and according to the Dictionary of Biblical Symbolism, really tells you that gold is the doctrines of grace. That's embarrassing. It can also represent true converts. So, hey, we need to buy some true converts, or it can represent the Babylonian Empire. Okay, so if it represents the Babylonian Empire, hey, now you could do that. Hey, buy from me gold, and the Babylonian Empire was the empire that, brought chastisement upon Israel. So the church needed to buy their own version of the Babylonian Empire to bring persecution against them. But even that's a stretch. I don't know. I think maybe we've fallen into the preacher's trap. Oh, wait, gold, white raiment, Aesop. That's 3 points. That makes for a good sermon. Hey, I'm going to preach it that way. I think maybe we're guilty of, I'll call that preacher interpretation instead of hermeneutical interpretation, because there's a lot of times the text is interpreted for the sake of the sermon instead of the sermon surrendering itself to the interpretation of the text. Sometimes preachers make the text surrender to the preaching instead of the preaching surrendering itself to the text. We take the text and make it work for our purpose of preaching. We got to make it interesting. We got to make it, and sometimes we take the text and make it surrender to our Sunday school teachers can do it, since Will's listening. Sometimes we are guilty of making the text surrender to us teaching. I need a lesson, so I've got to make the text work for a lesson. No. The text is not there to give you a lesson. The text is for you there to teach. Whether it comes across as a good lesson or it's entertaining or it's informative, that's irrelevant. My job is to figure out the text. So maybe that's the most valuable lesson in all of this. All right, there you go. All right, you can email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. I feel like that you're watching a movie for the dramatic conclusion, and we just got there, and I'm like, sorry. That's the end of the week. That's it. That's the end of our study in Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. It's supposed to be the end. Obviously, I don't know what else to do. We may come back to this. I'm going to wait and see what people do, depending on emails. People may say, well, we got to find a way to conclude this. I think what we just saw with the gold is demonstrates how we have to handle this. That's right. Trying to make all of these fit, I think, is problematic. I think what we need to do is see the contrast that's being developed in the text. Here's the city. Here's their 3 main sources of income. Here's the church. They're lukewarm, which makes them then vulnerable to this unaware, self-deceived, self-sufficient mindset because of what's going on in the city. They think they're rich. They think they have all of these things. Spiritually, they don't. And the very things they need is in contrast to what the city offers. That to me, and so it's just a matter of don't turn to the city for these things. Turn to Christ for the spiritual. He will meet all of your spiritual needs. So you can we are spiritually blessed in Christ with all spiritual blessings. So spiritually, we are rich in Christ. Right? Spiritually, we are clothed in Christ with an imputed righteousness. Now, so I think gold could just be spiritual riches. I guess we could do it that way. So I don't know. The more I talk, the more ideas I'll come up with. So we'll see. We'll leave it there. Maybe we'll leave it there. If not, maybe we will. Starting next Monday, so coming Monday, now, if you have access to the curriculum, if you've signed up, it's already there. We will start a week-long study and a section of 1 Kings, which is going to bring up a million hermeneutical issues. So that next week may all be about hermeneutics, but we'll get there. All right, I'll stop right there. Everyone have a great day, great evening. I may be back here. I don't know. It's going to take a lot of time to check this and make sure that everything's okay here because I have to check it now because if I wait 15 minutes, this podcast is going to be everywhere. So if there's a problem in here, I'm going to have to delete it ASAP. So I've got to check this and make sure it's all good. All right. I'll stop right there. Thank you for listening. God bless.